How can you create the optimum learning state for your students? Oh, that's a great question we're doing today. And we're about to reveal NLP Secrets. Ooh, I love secrets. What's NLP and why do we need to learn about it? I'm Gloria St. Germain from Ultimate Music Theory, and I had the privilege of completing my training. I even have my certificate to prove it. Completing my training to become an NLP practitioner from my very special guest, Judy Bartkowiak. And she's an NLP, Neuro Linguistic Programming master practitioner and EFT trainer and a life coach. And she's also the author of numerous NLP books, including highly recommended book, which is called Engaging NLP for Teachers. And we're actually going to be talking a lot about NLP and teachers. So welcome, Judy.
Hi, Glory. Lovely to see you again.
Yes, I'm so thrilled that you're here because we've got a lot of people on our call watching today, and I'm so excited that you're going to share the important lessons of identifying, first of all, our own state as an educator, and then how can we optimize this before beginning to teach a lesson. And I think that's just really one of the really key points as an educator. Now, an important question, and I'm sure our viewers are interested to know, what exactly is neuro-linguistic programming and how did you get started in NLP?
Okay, well, NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, neuro is everything in your head, all those thoughts, those beliefs, the things that can sometimes help us and sometimes really not. Right. And then the linguistic bit is how we present that, how we express that, both in our body language and also in our words. And then programming is the results we get, sometimes good, sometimes not so good. And how I got started was because I had 4 children from teen to toddler, and I seemed to be always in fight or flight. Yeah, I was stressed, I was unhappy, often in tears. And a friend of mine suggested I do the intro to NLP, Sue Knight. I knew her from church, in fact, and she was just starting her programs, and she invited me along, and life was never the same afterwards. It was just, I just completely got what was going on and took control really of what was going on in my head. And yeah, the kids were a bit surprised. They thought an alien had descended. But yeah, it was life-changing.
Yeah. Well, I know as an author, sometimes we are so passionate about what we learn that we're excited to share that with the world. And I'm so glad that you did. Can you maybe share a little bit about what motivated you to start writing your books on NLP? I mean, you'd completed the training. Your children are now in love with the new mom.
I'm not sure I liked it all the time.
So what was the motivation when you said, you know what, I'm going to write a book?
To be honest, I've always written. I used to write little letters to my dolls and my bears, and I used to write letters to my friends, and I used to just write stories. I've always loved writing. I kept a journal. So when I had the opportunity, as the children got a little older, I did a creative writing course, then an advanced creating writing course, joined a writing group, and then did some freelance writing on parenting and NLP. And it was only actually when I met somebody from Hodder at an event that was organized by the Open University that I was encouraged to get published, because I suppose many people write, but they don't actually think that anyone will buy their books.
That's right. Yes.
And I was encouraged to submit, and I've written quite a number of books now for Hodder. And, so it really spreads the word. I mean, I'd love NLP to be going into all the schools. Yes, it was really, that was the way. I'd been a writer before, long before this happened.
Well, I think when you really take time to share your passion and you're making a difference in the world. I mean, for one, I loved taking the NLP practitioners training with you, and it really had a huge impact on how I looked at my own way of thinking and communicating with others more effectively, and certainly within, my teaching as well. And as I said, here's my little certificate. I was like so proud. And one of the things I think that was exciting for me was that I was like you, once I learned the importance of NLP and how it could change the things that I did, I was really grateful that not only had I purchased your books, but that I could, connect with you and take the training. Now, can you just share with us, how did you get started in creating your online program?
It was really, again, similar to the books in the sense that I wanted to push it out as far as I could. So, the certain people buy the books, and then of course there's people who want to actually go on and be a practitioner or include it in their work. And so the training really came from that. Mm-hmm. And what I was doing was creating a training program that really was everything that I knew and had experienced in my therapy room and in my own practice, sharing that with people who would then take it out into countries all over the world, which is really exciting.
It is really exciting. I have a question for our viewers today too. If you are new to NLP, perhaps you could just drop a little note into the chat box and say, I'd love to learn more about NLP, or maybe you have a question specifically for Judy on how you can communicate more effectively. I've got 5 questions I'm going to be asking her, and you may want to grab a pen and paper and just jot a few things down as we're going through here. So I'd love to hear from you. What are you thinking about? What kind of things are you looking for? What are you interested in learning about when it comes to NLP? So, I think we all have, as we can attest, we all have good days and bad days. But when it comes to being a professional teacher, that's when we need to be in that positive state of mind to really be effective during our teaching time. So we got to kind of change our hat. No matter what, we got to go in there with that great attitude. So how important is your own state as an educator, and how can you optimize that before beginning to teach a lesson, Judy?
Well, your own state will affect the energy in the room. So be aware of your own limiting beliefs and your meta programs. So more of that later. But how do you communicate what works for you, what doesn't? Do you know what the best state is for you to be in before you start educating, before you start teaching? Maybe some of you have things like mindfulness techniques that you do. Maybe you do some heart math breathing. That's the breathing into your heart for 6 and breathing out, and just steadying your breathing, because your state will be very determined by your breathing. So if you don't feel you're in the best state, if you sort of like, I don't know, you're late for the lesson, or I don't know, your husband's just shouted at you that morning, or you just know that you're just not in a good place. Yes. You need to just breathe into your heart and slow your breathing right down, and that's when you'll be effective. And if you're particularly visual, you can do like a little visualization. Imagine yourself somewhere really beautiful, a lovely beach or whatever. I was on a lovely beach in Canada a few weeks ago, actually. Yeah. Set compelling outcomes. What I want to achieve in this lesson is, so it just sort of gives you a bit of control. Yeah. And you can anchor a perfect learning state by just thinking of where you'd like to be, what, like a sound, maybe a piece of music that creates the optimal learning state. Yeah. Sometimes, a piece of jewelry. I know when I used to have to present at conferences and things, I had a really pretty pair of blue earrings, and they just really, I think I'd anchored confidence to those. So yeah. You can do things like that.
Yes. It makes me smile that you're saying this, Judy, because I recall when my children were younger, and at that time I taught 100 students a week, and there was a door going into my music studio. So I was a very busy teacher. So when I was in the kitchen, I would be saying to my children, now make sure you clean up your room and don't forget to do your homework. And, dad's going to be here. He's going to be making you supper. And so I would be this person. And then I would open the door into my music studio, and the click of the door closing would change my state. And then I'd be, oh, hi, Judy, how are you? And I remember my children, DJ and Sherry, they were little, and they used to laugh and say, can we just like have the lady that's on the other side of the door? Because she's like way nicer. And I'm like, sorry. So yeah, that was before NLP.
Well, you were intuitive. I mean, that's very much how an anchor works.
Yes, right. But I just remember click, And then,
Yeah.
but it was funny. I think as professionals, we all have those self-doubts sometimes that you were thinking, you were talking about, and thinking that, we can't do something. And I don't even think it matters how good we get at our craft. We always have that self-doubt, or we feel that feeling in our subconscious mind, and it can truly affect our behavior. And I think, we are intuitive, we're educators, and we can see that in our students as well. Perhaps you could just maybe explain, what is the limiting belief, and how can you overcome these, not only for yourself, but for your student as well?
Limiting beliefs are usually formed and printed in our subconscious, in our 0 to 6, when between the ages of 0 and 6, sometimes even in utero. And I don't think it's your job as a teacher to help your student overcome this, but being aware of it will help you to be a better teacher, because if you know that particular student really wants to be, has a belief, I need to be perfect, or I'm not good enough, or whatever. If you know what their belief is, what you're then doing is looking for evidence of the opposite. So if it's I need to be perfect, you wouldn't play into that. You just sort of say that sounded delightful, even though it wasn't quite right, or whatever. So you would look for evidence of the opposite belief, so that you gradually sort of lead them towards perhaps at least questioning their limiting belief.
Yes. I think one of the things that's so interesting for us as educators is that we have, obviously many students that come into our music studio, and with each one, we have to change that thinking process and that communication, because one student will come in with one limiting belief, and then the next student walks in and totally the opposite. And so you have to be really aware, and very often I feel so blessed, because I will have many students that start with me when they're 3 or 4 years old, and I'll have them until they're 20 years old. They head off to college. And so I see the changes, and I'm able to help them grow as not only as musicians, but just as human beings in their future. And it's really exciting. I think really the key to being that effective teacher is being an effective communicator. And I've learned so much of that from completing my NLP with you. So how important are the words we use when we're teaching? Now, I've heard that there's some toxic words that I've learned from you, but can you share what they are, and perhaps what we could use instead of those toxic words?
Absolutely, because as an educator, you are what we call in NLP an influential person. So what you say to your student will be hugely important. And also the brain can better process positivity, what you do want rather than what you don't want. So toxic words are words like don't, like don't forget to. Brain's hearing forget to. So, the don't word, it's like saying, don't think about pink elephants. I'm sure all the listeners here now, pink elephants, that's interesting. So the don't word, definitely toxic. The but word, like, oh, you played that really well, but if only you'd done such and such. Everything after the but is really heard. So you need to do it round the other way, and to say, few little mistakes, but great play, or and another really good one I love is the hypnotic embedded command. And what that is, where you say, I'm wondering, in a very wondering voice, which is slightly hypnotic, how great you'll feel when you play this piece even better. And the when assumes they will. So it's a hypnotic embedded command, and that works a dream. I use that with my children a lot. Like, I'm wondering, when you do your homework, how great you'll feel.
Right.
And they're sort of trying to work out what you said. They just get on with it.
And because your own children, of course, are well aware of your NLP expertise. They probably go, would you stop analyzing me?
Yeah, they just don't NLP me, Mum.
Well, I do have a funny story to share with you. After I was taking the training, and I realized that very often teachers may say, if you could please get your homework done this week, it's really important. And so I changed the word if to when.
Yeah.
And then I added a little something as well. I'm going to use the wondering, though. I haven't heard that one before. So thanks for that tip today, Judy. So then I would say, when you do your homework this week, just send me a quick text message like, yay, I did 1 hour. It'll take you 2 seconds. So when you do your homework, don't, I shouldn't say don't. When you remember to send me a quick text message. Well, guess what? It was like a miracle. I got all these texts. Yep. Practice for an hour. Yep. And I went, wow, like that didn't happen before. And then they proudly came in and said, well, as you said, when I did my homework, I sent you a text message. I said, I loved it. So I think that there's something really important happening in communication when we use it effectively. We have a quick question here from one of our listeners, Judy. So Christopher says, how do you become deliberately aware of every student's limiting belief without falling into the trap of feeling responsible for destroying the limiting beliefs of students, which seems like it could be too overwhelming?
That's a very long question. I can pick up a limiting belief by a student's body language, and I'm sure you can, when they're sort of hunched over the piano, shoulders rounded down, their voice takes on sort of a slightly muttering, it's quite low, quite soft. And there's often an I can't involved. So I can pick that up very much by their body language. About taking responsibility, I mean, I don't, your responsibility as a teacher is obviously to teach the music. I don't think going into the subconscious mind of when they embedded that in their 0 to 6 is really part of the remit of a teacher. People may disagree with me, but I mean, that's the work I do as a therapist. And you have to have some training because some of these things are imprinted in the subconscious by a parent, maybe a teacher at school. It can be, as young as 2, when mum has a child number 2 and they feel replaced, abandoned, all these sort of things. So that really isn't part of the job of a teacher, I think.
Right. And I think one of the things that you just said too, for me, is always, probably the most obvious is the physiology, because when students come bouncing in and they have the big smile on their face, they're so happy to be there. They're so proud. They probably did a great job of practicing that weekend, and they're excited versus the rounded shoulders and the book bag because they forgot it conveniently at home. So there's a lot of avenues, and then we do have to kind of have a few plans. I know for myself, if students forget their books, I have 1 hour to have a really productive lesson with them, even if they come in feeling defeated. And I'll just open up, I've got a lot of books, obviously, and I'll say, you know what, it's great that you forgot your books, because today we're going to do sight reading. So hop on the bench and easy books, and we're going to do duets for an hour. And it brings such joy, and they learn to read, and we learn to laugh and share. And, so I think there's a lot of opportunities to really have a powerful and positive impact on our students. Regardless of how they show up, I always say it's my job to make you feel better when you leave.
Absolutely. And it also shows them that whatever happens, there's always a positive option. That you can look on it positively, or you can look on it negatively. Right. And obviously we want them to be positive.
Yes. And it really just takes a minute, right? So I think as an educator, I've got to have a lot of little tricks up my sleeve. I've got, music theory games. I've got, sight reading books. I've got different instruments that we can use, drums and xylophones and just bells. And, like I said, you're here for a short time. So I want to make it a positive experience for them.
Absolutely.
So when we are in our optimum learning state, is there a way that we can anchor? And that was a word that I really, really loved when I was doing the NLP training with you, because I used it often and I still do to this day. So is there a way that we can anchor an optimum learning state? So how do we do this?
Well, you described it excellently earlier with the click of the door. we have negative anchors sometimes, you know, maybe a particular pupil or student might be like, oh my goodness, it's so and so, and you look at the book and you go, oh. So it can be powerful negatively, but also you can turn that around and make sure you have a positive anchor. And one of the things I do is I use essential oils. Sometimes just rub those on my hands and just sort of breathe that in. And that might make me feel really quite positive, uplifted. So I use definitely use essential oils for anchoring. I can visualize, you know, the teacher saying, you know, oh, you've done a really good piece, or it's really well done. So you anchor your outcome, you know, how you're going to feel afterwards, by sort of playing it through in your head, in a sense. Also, you can use an action like putting your hands on your lap, a sigh like you know, a nice happy sigh, or some words like, yes, here we go. You know, just find your own anchor, and it obviously takes longer than we've got on the call to show you how to set your anchor. But you know, I can write something up if you wanted to distribute that.
Yes. One of the anchors that I often use with my students as well is when they're preparing for an exam and they've, you know, worked through their material. And so we do the finger anchor, which I actually got from as I was studying your book as well. And I use the third finger and the thumb and just push them really hard together. And you can really feel that.
Yes.
Sometimes we go through all of them, you know, I'm confident, I feel great, I have excellent posture, I love music, or whatever it might be. Just, and then they go through that and it just really prepare. Plus it's good for your fingers as a piano player. And it really, I think, and now my students, they just enjoy it because they think, okay, I'm ready. And they go through it. And I think mentally it just helps them anchor that feeling of success and visualizing, you know, before we went live on the call, I was sharing with Judy that when I was working on my music, my ARCT, and I actually had a blank space on the wall, and I would visualize that wall. I never put anything up there. I didn't put up a picture. It took me years and years to accomplish that. And it was always blank right beside my piano. And I visualized that when I one day received that certificate, it would be framed in gold. And I could see the frame. It had gold and it had black velvet mat around it. And then there was my certificate. And I would often, you know, after hours of practicing, I would just stare at the wall and go, someday that's going to be where you're going to hang it. And in fact, it really helped me, that visualization, because eventually I did frame that certificate in gold. So I think it's important to have that, whatever it might be, right?
Absolutely. And when you mentioned about the fingers, another way, you know, we said about the breathing is you could breathe, take your fingers and breathe in and out, in and out.
I like that.
And out, in and out, in and out. And it just, again, controls the breathing. Control your breathing, you control your state.
Absolutely. I think as teachers, we also often set goals for both ourselves personally and professionally. And we also help our students set goals for what we plan to accomplish in our music lessons together. And then there's the big one, is that, so sometimes our students and you know, us as teachers, we plan our goals. And then what if the student's goal isn't the same as the parents? Because in music lessons, we really are a triad. We are the teacher, the student, and the parent. So how can we work with this?
Well, you might not like this answer, but I would always go with the child's goal, because the child is the one that you've got the relationship with. You're sitting at the piano with them. And I would trust that if the child meets their own goal, what will happen is intuitively, connectedly, borrowing benefits that will actually meet the parent's goal as well.
Yes. And, you know, it's funny you said that, Judy, because I agree with you 100%. And I've actually even had conversations with parents saying, you know, this is your child's goal. They actually want to do this. And I'm here to support them, and together we can make it happen. But we also need that support from the parents at home. I have another little, more of a comment from Geraldine, and she said to you, wow, I really like that. She said, that's so true. She said, and she also added that so many kids are down on themselves and they really need that positive feedback from us. So I think that really helps them grow, right, as musicians. I always find so much value in learning and implementing strategies that help us become more conscious, I think, of the way that we think and how we communicate, and then ultimately how we get the results that we get. So I want to share, if it's okay with you, Judy, I asked you about 3 tips.
Oh, yes, the 3 tips.
The 3 famous tips that you could share with us today. So I'm going to ask our audience, our viewers here now, to just grab a quick pen and write these down, because these are really great tips. So here's tip number 1, which is be aware how you influence the space. Be aware of how you influence the space. So can you elaborate on that, Judy?
I can. I don't know whether you feel that discussion of things like energy fields is a bit out there and a bit woo-woo, but basically we are more than our bodies. We are what we present, what we push into our energy field.
Yeah.
And when we have positive thoughts, when we have loving and caring and compassionate and kind thoughts, people can pick that up in our energy field.
Yes.
And so that will communicate to the child, to the student.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have, say, an assumption like, oh, I don't like boys, I don't like 8-year-old boys, or children who started at such and such an age, or pushy parent, you know, be aware of what you're bringing to it. If you have an assumption that, I don't know, all whatevers are such and such, or
Yeah.
you know, or that this child never does their practice, right, you know, they probably never will do their practice.
Right.
You know, what you focus on is what you're going to get. So if you have an expectation, they're going to pick that up, and they're going to feel judged. So be careful of what you delete, what you miss out, whether you generalize, whether you think all such and such, whether you're distorting. You know, this child hasn't done their practice, therefore they're going to be rubbish in their exam. Well, maybe they will, maybe they won't.
Right.
You know, we aren't mind readers.
Yes.
And also, you know, if you have the view, oh, you know, they're doing that just to annoy me. Well,
right.
They probably aren't.
Well, sometimes.
Oh, well, but we still can't, we can't mind read.
Yes.
And, you know, just take a deep breath and say to yourself, what evidence do I have for this belief? You know, do I really know this to be true? And it could be that it's got nothing, you know, when we make it all about ourselves, it's quite dangerous. It might just be that mum's just been in a really foul mood all week and they just haven't felt relaxed enough to practice. It might be nothing to do with us.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's so interesting that well, I love everything that you're obviously, I'm so enjoying our conversation today. And I think it's really important to take time sometimes for reflecting on our thoughts and ultimately our actions, because that really defines what, as you said, the energy that we bring around us. And sometimes I'm all about the woo-woo world, by the way. And I was teaching a young student yesterday, and she said to me, and I was just having this lovely lesson with her. She's quite delightful, and she's about 5.5, almost 6, I think. And she said to me, "Oh, you remind me of my grandma." And I said, "Oh, thank you. That's nice." And then she said, "But my grandma passed away." And I said, "Oh, I'm sorry." And I said, "Well, I'll kind of be your grandma then, you know, what am I going to say, right?"
Oh, that's so sweet.
She said, "Your voice reminds me of her." And then she added, she said, "And she visits me every weekend." And I was like, wow. So she's kind of hearing my voice coming through. And that really, I think, brought her comfort, you know, just knowing that in it, and she passed away not that long ago. So it's still kind of fresh in her mind. You know? Anyway, it's an interesting life we have when we
it is, yeah.
children. So here is tip number 2. Identifying your student's learning style. This is a big one. So what are the different learning styles and how can we identify them?
Yeah, if you've got all day. So, visual, auditory, and kinesthetic, basically. Visual is where we notice what we see.
Yeah.
Auditory is where we notice what we hear. And my guess is that most music students are going to be auditory. And kinesthetic is where you notice what you feel and do. So those are the key ones. But I think actually, the words are going to be different according to which your student is. So if your student is quite visual, you would say things like, imagine how this piece would sound in a beautiful music room, or look at how well you're playing. Can you see how, so you'd use words like look, see, imagine. Yeah. If your student is auditory, then just listen to that, or the sound of this, or did you hear, so you'd use those words. And kinesthetic, it would be much more about the do, the feel. You're feeling through this music beautifully. So you would use those language patterns. You can usually tell a kinesthetic child because they're usually quite fidgety.
Yes.
But those are the different learning styles. But you also have things like choices and process. Some children like choices. Would you like to play this or this? Some others really don't want choices, and they just want to know, I'll play this, then this.
Yes.
Some big chunk, and they want the concept of the piece. Mm-hmm. Others might like the detail of it, when it was written and who by, and so on. Some students will be towards, which is what they're aiming for. But others will be away from, like what we want to avoid, be careful of this passage or this bar or whatever. Right. So some are internally referenced, so that it matters to themselves how well they've played. Others are externally referenced and want to please you. Right. So knowing how they process is a really important factor.
One of the things I find interesting as well as I was studying the NLP training and becoming more aware of learning styles in my students, I realized that I would have, maybe a beautiful bouquet of flowers on my table that maybe my husband had just given me for no reason. He's that kind of a guy sometimes. I just get flowers, and I love them. The no reason flowers are the best. And some students would walk into the room and say, what's the occasion? I love your flowers. And others were completely oblivious. They would just walk over the piano and sit down and start to play. And I'm like, hello, aren't you even gonna? But because it didn't mean anything to them. And others would be sitting at the piano and they'd say, what's that noise? And I'd say, what are you talking about? I didn't hear anything. And they'd say, that noise, that like humming. And I'd say, someone left the fan on, in the bathroom or something. So it really just, if you listen to the words they use, it can really influence now how you can approach teaching them, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
What I found interesting too, I actually have to show your book, Judy. So I was completing, hope you can all see it. As I was completing, this is Judy's book. It's called the Neuro Linguistic Programming Workbook. And I finally realized that even though I always thought and assumed that I was kinesthetic learner, like I would have bet, at least $20. And as it turns out, I'm actually visual and very visual. And it's really helped me learn more about my own learning style, but also how I can teach more effectively now that I can understand how to assess my students' learning style. I love this workbook. I reread it often. You can probably tell because I dog ear all of the little pages up at the top. So it's called the Neuro Linguistic Programming Workbook. And there's lots and lots of pages to do. I've obviously written in it many times. I was sharing with Judy, the interesting thing is that I actually completed the workbook and I wrote the date on every page. I had a goal to complete the entire book by June the 1st in 2013. And I did. And I was like, yay. So goal setting is an important one as well. And that brings us to the final tip number 3. I like this one, Judy. Identify why students may feel anxious. stressed or worried and use one technique to change their state or mood. So how do we change, well, first of all, our own state, I guess, and then our students' state?
So what's a good idea is to calibrate what their state is. And what I mean by that is to ask them, how are you feeling right now? And on a scale of 0 to 10, how intense is that? So if they're saying, I feel a bit nervous, I feel a bit low, I feel a bit tired. So on a scale of 0 to 10, where's that? 10 being obviously really stressed, 0 being 0.
Yeah.
And then what we can do is maybe ask them what the color is and where it is in their body. So it might be stressed in my stomach, or sick in my stomach, tired in my head. It might be sad in my heart. And what's the color? So it might be sad, I don't know, brown in my heart, or anxious, green in my stomach. And then what we can do, we talked a bit before we started about tapping. I'll just very quickly, I know I haven't got very much time, but what you then would do is do a setup. Even though I'm feeling green, anxious in my tummy, I totally love and accept myself anyway. And you do that 3 times, and then you just tap through the points, which are the points for the acupressure points, just like acupuncture, but without needles. You'll be glad to hear. And you tap it down. And also another thing you can do if you want to be quicker, and also if you don't know about tapping, although many of you probably will, is to bring in the color. So say if they've got green, anxious in their tummy, you can say, what color would lighten and brighten that anxiety? And it might be yellow, or your color for your frame, gold, so yellow. So, okay, close your eyes and just put your hand on your tummy and your hand on your heart. And let's bring some yellow in. So let's bring some yellow in through your head, in through your body, into your heart, in through your legs, in through your hands, and take it into your tummy and really get that yellow to change the color of that green in your stomach. And breathe out that green. And of course, remember that changing your breathing changes your state. So you sort of get two goes at that. You've got the auditory acknowledging the feeling, the kinesthetic with the breath, and you've got the visual with the color.
One of the things that you shared was with the breathing, and which I even as you were breathing, I couldn't help but breathe with you. And I think when we do that with our students, one of the things that made me smile, I was reading as you and I've been sharing a few notes, and you said, do this until they're relaxed, and then except not asleep.
Not quite.
Because it really does. And even sometimes I find with myself, I have a hard time sleeping sometimes because I'm so busy. And if I just take my breathing down and just let it go, it can really put me in that calm and relaxed state. And I think it's really helpful for students. And it's almost something you can do quickly at the beginning of every lesson, because they're rushing in the door. They've got their bags. They just came from school or swimming lessons or soccer or wherever it was, some activity. And just to take a minute, and maybe I should start implementing this into my own teaching, is have the 1 minute, where you're going from where you were to the state of calm and ready for learning. So I think that the breathing is
yeah. There's so many different ways that you can change your breathing. Obviously, one is exercise, which you can't do around your piano or whatever. Laughter is fantastic. And the thing is, the brain hears laughter, and you can fool the brain. If you go the brain has no idea that you're actually putting it on, and that like singing changes the state. So have a belly laugh at the beginning of the lesson, and
that's great. That is so great. I'm going to get these back out. You're giving me so many ideas, Judy. I actually have 2 buttons. One is a panic button that goes ha 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 ha, and then it has this hilarious giggle at the end, and you can't help but laugh every time you hear it because it's so funny. And the other one is that was easy,
Oh, I've got that. Yes.
And so, but the panic button, and on occasion, if I'm playing a game with my students, I put them on my table. And no doubt, if they're there, as soon as they walk in the door, they always want to hit that button because it's funny. So maybe I should just bring it out again, because it's a great way.
Yeah, laughter. I mean, they say laughter's the best medicine. It really is.
It is. Yeah. It just makes you feel so happy. Well, I want to say thank you so much, Judy. I feel so relaxed and stress-free, ready to start my day. Breathing, smiling, laughing, telling jokes. It's all good. How can we connect and learn more about your materials and your resources, Judy?
Well, I've got a lot of books that I've written over the years. If any of you are parents, I'd like to just show you this one, which is Be a Happier Parent with NLP. And that really covers everything. It's sort of like an NLP course, but for parents. And then there are certain books that are like the engaging NLP for teachers that you showed. There's one for children, which is a little workbook for children, and then one for tweens, one for teens, and a sort of lighter read parent one. This is more of a workbook than a textbook. But everything's on my website. It's nlpfamily.com. And you can always get in touch with me, Judy at nlpkids.com. And I'm always happy to talk to people. I have a Facebook group, NLP Kids, as well, where I share quite a lot of tips and things.
Yes. And I actually have all of those books, and I've read all of them, and they're all fantastic. And as a matter of fact, in teaching some of my students that have now gone on to become teachers, I always suggest to them, you need to read this and you need to read this. And so I may lend them my book, but I usually say, go get your own, because I write in all of my books. I have notes written all over my little.
Yes, royalties are only 10%. So yes, I do.
Yeah, I have little there. So nlpfamily.com. And I highly recommend the Never Ending Professional Development, because there's always new things to learn. And speaking of learning, so what's coming up next in your professional development, Judy?
Fascinating. Well, I've been learning EFT, the Emotional Freedom Technique, which is tapping. I've also learned, and I'm becoming a trainer at the end of January. I'll be a trainer for that. Also PTT, which is picture tapping, where you draw pictures and you do the tapping in between. And matrix re-imprinting, which is where we go back to the 0 to 6 and sometimes in utero to find where the limiting belief has come from, and re-imprint a much more resourceful belief. I've done that training, and I've done matrix birth re-imprinting, so rebirthing if you've had a bad birth or your child has, and matrix past life re-imprinting as well. So lots of things like that. Finding it all fascinating. Bit of kinesiology as well, the energy alignment method, the sway that you may know. I'm always learning. I love Donna Eden and her energy medicine work. Always learning.
Always learning. You truly are an inspiration to all of us. And I know you provided a lot of value and opportunity for us to use the power of NLP to really effectively succeed in any situation. We just need to take action, make sure we follow up and implement what we've learned. So I want to say thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Wonderful and very informative interview, Judy. I really do appreciate it. It's so great to see you again. I did my NLP training in 2013, so I haven't sort of seen you face to face since then. So it's fantastic. Judy is in the UK and I'm in Canada. And I should mention, if you heard her say 0 to 6, we would say 0 age. or I'm like, not. I'm thinking quickly. Yes. A little different. Anyway, if you've enjoyed this video, please be sure to like, comment, and share, and join our Ultimate Music Theory Facebook group so you can network with other musicians and educators such as Judy. And if you want the latest interviews and more music theory tips, be sure to subscribe to our Ultimate Music Theory YouTube channel, because we release new videos every week. We're here for you. Have a fantastic musical day, everyone. And don't forget to grab your copy of your NLP Teachers Training. So till next time, thanks for joining us.